Instead of you and I driving a car today, we need to discuss something incredibly important: infrastructure, but specifically as it pertains to electric vehicles. Why? Because over the past couple of years, I believe, Elon, he's been teasing this whole concept of, the supercharger network. It's not a walled garden. We'd like it to be open to other electric vehicles. But nothing ever happened. There was never a timeline to hit this goal until this week. You see, he decided to use his official PR channel, Twitter, to announce that this goal will be hit by the end of 2021, this year. And you can imagine, this will have a huge impact, not just on the EV ecosystem, as well as the car business. It's going to have a huge impact on the overall business world. Okay, so before you and I dive off as to how this specific decision is not only a brilliant business decision, but it's also a shrewd business decision, first, a bit of housekeeping. As I've asked now in a couple of episodes, would greatly appreciate your help with the algorithm. What does that mean? Yes, it means clicking subscribe and notifications, hitting the like button, leaving a comment, but most importantly, sharing these episodes with your friends on all your socials, especially Reddit. Why Reddit? That's where we see the most lift. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, what exactly happened? Well, to answer that question, I need to kind of paint the picture of how the rest of the car world communicates with folks like me and communicates with folks like you. You see, a company like Ford will have a PR department that communicates with people like me, and we decide, do we want to talk about this Ford or this technology from Ford and share it with you guys? Tesla, they don't do that. They had a group like that, but they dismantled them about a year or two ago, and everything goes through one man, through one outlet, good, bad, or indifferent. And that's why you and I are getting the same information at the same time. And you could imagine who that is, Elon through Twitter. And this week, I believe it was on Tuesday, he specifically stated, by the end of this year, he is going to support charging with other car manufacturers. And he started answering specific people's replies to his tweet, like, how are we going to do this? The biggest issue being the charging port. If you live in North America and have a Tesla, you can take your Tesla with an adapter and go to, say, an Electrify America charging port, but you can't do it in reverse with a Taycan. In Europe, they've kind of fixed this issue because finally Tesla moved over to the J1772 plug, and the Type 2 plug that they use is now on CCS. So this way there isn't an issue in Europe, but the rest of the world there is. He did respond to a couple of people and said he would be open to a standardized plug in different regions of the world. Like, for example, the plug is different from North America to, say, Europe. There's a Type 1 in North America and a Type 2 in Europe. Now, the purpose of this episode is not to debate charge port standards or the intricacies of the technology behind it. Rather, it's to understand why this announcement is important. And there, it opens up to more questions. First and foremost, which OEMs would A, want to be on this network, and B, what's the business model associated with it? Then who gets priority? Like, would Tesla cars get priority over, say, a Porsche Taycan or somebody else? And then number three, what's in it for Elon? Now, yeah, there's a lot more questions, but those are the biggest that we have to address. Okay, now that we understand the parameters there, let's focus on the most obvious question. Which other car companies would want to integrate with the supercharger network? And to answer that, we have to understand, what does the landscape look like aside from the supercharger network? There are some obvious ones out there, like Volkswagen and Porsche are working with Electrify America. Some others are working with ChargePoint. And we have to look at the size of those networks. The biggest one would be ChargePoint. They're currently at about 18,000 chargers, but a very small percentage of those is a fast DC charger. So let's say we look at Electrify America, which Volkswagen and Porsche have worked with heavily. And the reason why they have is because Porsche has an 800-volt architecture in one of their cars. So Electrify America is trying to support that with a faster DC charging system. But of the 2,600 they have out there, it's something like 600 or 800 are the faster DC charges. When you look into, say, the supercharger network, they're much faster around the world, but they have 25,000 superchargers out there. This is not just in North America, all over the world. That gives you an idea of the landscape and why the supercharger network is not just important, it's a competitive advantage. And one of the things, no matter if you are a Tesla fanboy or not, you have to show respect to Tesla for building the infrastructure first and then bring people along with a volume car. That's why Tesla's important, not because the car is so much better than everything else out there. Yeah, it's got some advantages, but at the end of the day, it's the infrastructure that really sets them apart, at least in 2021. And that's where things are changing. And here we have to go back to those other charging infrastructures, the charge points and the Electrify Americas of the world. Yeah, they're starting to catch up to the supercharger network. ChargePoint is the closest at 18,000 chargers around their entire network. But it's still far away, and their biggest disadvantage is they have a very small percentage that are DC fast chargers. So that's why there's an incentive for Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors, Nissan, all these car companies that are going to be giving us very competitive cars, kind of like the Ford Mach-e is. They need to work with chargers that will be faster. The faster you get these cars charged, the faster you get people to consider an EV as opposed to buying a gasoline car. So this is one of these things, a rising tide raises all ships. So you better believe if you are a car company that has a product roadmap that includes things like the Nissan Ariya, the Ioniq 5, and an all-electric Cadillac lineup, you probably want to do business with Elon Musk, because 25,000 fast chargers, you need that to sell your cars. The only questions you have to get answered is, how much is it going to cost you, and will your cars be prioritized at those chargers, or will Teslas be prioritized at those chargers? Now, in this instance, I can't predict what the Doge father will be doing, but if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, I gotta believe there is going to be some priority for Tesla vehicles in the short to medium term. Why is that? Because the EV market in total is something like 5% of total global sales, or even less than that. So really jockeying for position on priority, it's not a big deal. It's a matter of getting cars out there and getting the infrastructure growing. But once the car sales and the infrastructure simultaneously grow, let's say it's 20-30% of total vehicle sales, you're going to have more investment into infrastructure. So the charge points and the Electrifies of America, they'll have more charging network and they'll have faster chargers. So the priority won't be an issue on supercharger because there'll be more supply to meet the EV demand. Now, while I would love to go off on a tangent as to where that energy is coming from once we hit market saturation of electric vehicles, we're going to put a pin in that discussion for another day and get to a much bigger point of this discussion. What is in it for Elon? And here, this is why this decision or announcement is a shrewd business decision. I have maintained for a long time that Tesla, their real value is that infrastructure, is the charging network. But guess what? There's been investment from Volkswagen, from now even Ford, General Motors, giving money, as well as governments giving money to the charge points and the Electrify Americas and whatever they are over in Europe and Asia, and even UAE and Israel. There's investment happening, and it's no longer a competitive advantage, and you can see them catching up. 25,000 to say 2,600 chargers, that's a huge delta, that's a competitive advantage. But now the second runner-up is really close. It's 18,000 chargers. What needs to change is how fast those chargers are. And that's why this is a shrewd business decision. You see, Elon now gets to grow his supercharger network, which he owns and he brands, and other people pay for it. It's like the concept of owning rental real estate. Yeah, you don't live there, but you own the house, and someone is paying you rent and paying your mortgage. So one day you wake up and you have a paid off house, but you're still getting rental income, and you can in turn take that money and go buy more rental properties to make more income. See where we're going with this? General Motors, Ford, Volkswagen Auto Group, is going to be paying for rental property for Elon Musk. Now, of course, in this case, the rental property is the Supercharger network, but it's more important than that. The Supercharger network would still be owned by Tesla and thus controlled by Elon Musk, which would mean the man would have more of an impact on the EV ecosystem, not just his cars, but the overall EV charging network as well as the underlying technology. But here to further clarify my shrewd statement, let's get a little bit off topic and go somewhat into the future. If you were to ask any of these car manufacturers, including Tesla, do you want to be in the infrastructure business? Their answer would be a resounding no. It is a huge headache. The cost must be ridiculous. But the reason why Elon had to do it and why I really respect the man for doing it is because he had to prove the concept, meaning EV cars are great, but if you can't get gasoline in them, they're worthless. So he had to build the infrastructure. So if we're looking 20, 30 years in the future, I see this being completely handed off to energy companies. Maybe not the Shells and Exxon Mobils of the world, maybe a future derivation of that, but other companies will be running this. And that's why investment from a number of interested parties, meaning car manufacturers right now, as well as some governments, would be great for the entire industry because, as I said earlier, a rising tide will raise all ships. In this case, the ships, they're electric cars. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I will have to say, I am really looking forward to seeing some of your comments on this one because this topic, I gotta believe it's gonna be a bit of a hot potato. And of course, I do want to remind you again, I would greatly appreciate your help with the algorithm by, yes, leaving that comment, whether you agree or disagree, and of course, clicking the like button, subscribing, notifications, and most importantly, sharing these episodes with your friends on all of your socials, especially on Reddit. Until I see you in the next episode, which I believe will be driving definitely not an electric car, probably the furthest thing from it. I'll give you a hint. It has 631 horsepower. Until I see you in that episode, bis später.